position we see is the movement of the continents is imminent in the next a few, I don't want to put anything out in time, but more or less within a framework of 60 to 90 days, we have a very clear indication. We can say, when we say, for example, June of 2016, within 30 days, 90 days from that point, we expect a movement. There is a huge movement imminent, absolutely imminent in the coming months in West Coast of United States. I was explaining this to senior advisors in the American structure in the past few days. It's not a wishful thinking, it's not a problem. This disaster will force world peace. And I explain to you why. The public of United States will not be able to meet the demand for this disaster. It is on the scale that most of the American forces, naval forces around the world will be called back just to become floating homes for the people who don't have a home. The retraction of military from American government to support West Coast disaster will bring a new dimension in the world military power. They cannot commit themselves to overseas when the nationals have no home. The military forces will be returned to US to build homes for the people who lost home. The scale of disaster will force retraction of military forces which has been committed overseas, and with this change the course of the humanity. It is very simple. We estimate the total loss in West Coast of America over 10 to 20 million. This is a large scale disaster. This is not creating, what do you call it, panic, but this is what we see. Do not forget, California is the 8th biggest economy in the world. If we put California as a state on its own as a country, will higher rank than most of the European countries in the ranking of economy. The loss of such economy in a disaster is huge for US government. And the naval forces will be returned to the coast just to become temporary houses. Ships were used as what we call prisons, but these will be used temporarily to be able to house people. The problem, it will not be alone the physical structure, the problem will multiple to the nuclear warheads in this zone as well. This is not creating panic, or this is what we see. I have said this before.
So, Mr. Keshe,
Japan. Yes.
So please, can you give us a little practical advice? I know it's difficult because we're not dealing with specifics, but when you're passing a message to the people, what practical advice can you give?
There is nothing you can do. There is no practicality advice. There is none. We have to wait and see.
But is the most imminent danger one of tidal waves, tsunami?
No, it's an earthquake.
Should people get the height?
It will happen. It will happen in 2 sequences, most probably. This is what we think. I can be 100% wrong. I was not wrong forecasting the Fukushima. We said it's going to happen on the west coast of United States, but the movement, and it said it could penetrate to Japan, and we saw it happen. It's the way the continental plates move. This is not good. We're all waiting. All I mean, it's come. The Los Angeles, the California state has become the situation with Tehran. Tehran, earthquake is imminent, but the governments can't do anything. The whole position is we wait and see, and when it happens, see what we can do. We cannot put estimate. We can't get people moving to another part of the country. The hot spots.
Can you?
Pardon?
Sorry, excuse me. But can you specify the how far afield is this going to affect people globally? Should people in Europe be thinking about this? Should people in South?
Globally, we cannot say. One of the indications is this shift which is about to happen will separate the North American continent from South American continent. It's the beginning of the split of two continents. This is how strong it'll be. The geological pressures we see through the gravitational magnetic fields we observe is the separation of the two continents. Physical separation, total separation, is the beginning of the separation. So it has to be huge. It is not a normal earthquake condition, it is the separation of two continents. Two plates are about to break up, and one needs the other one. So it will not be in one shift, it's over time, but very rapid. United...
and will...
I do not stipulate, it's just what I see from my knowledge from the movement. It's one person in 7 billion, is my personal opinion. And in most of the disaster areas in past 10 years, wherever I predicted, I've been 90%, 99% correct. This change of this movement, what is holding it back is the separation of the South American continent from the North American continent. It'll take millions of years, but the beginning of it, because it's been so much, is so strong that it'll force the separation of two continents. It's happened before.
And excuse me, Mr. Keshe.
Yes.
Excuse me, Mr. Keshe. Is this likely to trigger volcanoes, volcanic activity? Is this likely to...
Possible. At the moment...
Sorry, personally for us here, we're living on, I think it's 9 active volcanoes on a tiny little Caribbean island. Are we doomed? Are we? I know you don't know the answer and the specifics, but it would be nice to get that kind of a scope or a gravity of, you know, if you're living on a volcano.
First of all, I was told you're in Dominican Republic by Caroline. That's why I called you Dominican Republic.
Okay.
So I have no knowledge about your islands. I have to look into it. But in overall, we see the what are called Hawaii Islands to partially submerge through the tidal wave. There is a 2-layer interaction. 1 layer inland, 1 layer offshore. The magnitude of one, if triggers the second one, New Zealand will be on the coast side, will be heavily affected. The scale of this tsunami is very, very big. It's not small. We saw the tsunami in what happened in Indonesia a few years ago in 2005, if I'm correct, or around that time, 2009, 2010. That tsunami created 250,000 deaths. And from Indonesia, it was felt on the east coast of Africa. This one is huge. If first one triggers the second one, because it's a breaking up, it's not adjustment. This is a breaking of two continents. That's why it's so big that it will force the separation of two continents. And these kind of motions has happened before. We've seen separation of places like Australia from the main Pangaea. This is my fear. This is my concern, and this is why it's delayed. The adjustment is so huge. If it happens, I have put an estimate of up to 20 million life immediate, not long term. It's the snap of finger.
May I ask another question, please?
Yeah.
Does the Keshe Foundation have the capacity of giving us warning when this stuff starts?
You have received it now.
And so now is the time to start organizing, saving food, saving water, getting to...
You don't need... I explained before in the meeting of the manufacturers with the gentleman online who was from the United States. I explained to him, or I explained to the people who were talking in that meeting, let's start manufacturing these units on the East Coast and around Texas that you can respond to as many people as you can.
Very good.
This is, I expect the worst in Tehran, because one will trigger the other one. Depends which one will go first, but the two are not connected, but one frees the continent to move, and it takes usually 12 to 24 months. It needs 2 cycles of rotation of the Earth to be able to free things. The contraction and the pull of the continental plates, once one is affected, it takes 12 months to 24 months to see where the other one is accommodated. It's like making a jigsaw. When you move one thing, you shake it till you get the other one into place. It needs seasonal contraction and expansion of the planet for it to accommodate. This is how the physical structure works. I was explaining yesterday, Earth was created in the like of a popcorn with a center seed. The gaps between the popcorn are filled with the water, but inside they're all connected to each other with the center field forces. This is how it works. So we do not know. I see the biggest problem with this will be, once it's released, the whole the fireball around the East Asia and American continent will settle. Will settle very rapidly within 500 years if that happens. But we don't even have to pass that 500 years. The position is in the hand of the what I call universal conditions of the galaxy movement. But if the American continent takes the move which is expected, it is a double whammy, what I call, in and out in 2 plates. There'll be nothing left of Los Angeles, that's for sure. That part of West Coast of America will be flattened due to the field forces. If 10% of the population walk away alive, they're lucky. We see it's the field forces. When you understand the forces of the plasma, you don't look at the magnetic gravitational field and continental move. You see what fields are coming and how they're forcing the change. We are not talking geological, we're looking for the plasma effects, and that's what we see. In the west coast of United States, when this movement happened, a series of continental plates in different layers have to adjust at the same time, because one is so powerful which triggers the others. And one will happen in the ocean, between 30 to 50 kilometers offshore. It's the way the continents are locked into each other.
Do you have the ability to offer people shelter in any parts of the world with the technologies that you have?
Some of us have to pay for our deeds. This is harsh to say, but some of us have to pay for our deeds.
Is this karma at play?
This is the way the structure works. This is the way the structure is set. But physical movement are not part of what we control. It's a natural process of the planet. It's nothing to do with what and who. These conditions have no mercy on no one, child, adult, or whatever. This is I've written about this, is what I see. When I forecasted the situation in Japan, I said it'll radiate to Japan, and we saw it happen with a time frame. I don't want to give a time frame, but I tell you this, you don't have much time. And it will be a sequence of movement, because it's so geared up. The Japanese earthquake released the pin, but there's 2 points left of the pin to release itself. And when one goes, it releases the second one. There is a possibility of a huge tsunami in the west coast, 40 to 50 kilometers offshore. And then if that comes this way, part of it, and the other one hits the other way, and then you can see what happens on both sides. We don't have a choice. This is natural. It's happened before. This just happens to be our time.
And how much time will people have?
Pardon?
How much time do you imagine people will have from? How much time do you imagine the people will have from the moment that that trigger happens to the moment we would see a tsunami hitting the coastline or whatever? How much time will people have to?
We don't have time. The first earthquake inland will trigger the tsunami in time. If the tsunami happens first, it will be worse. This is the problem. I hope the inland earthquake will be before the tsunami, because it takes the pressure off their movement. But if the movement in the ocean happens first, then God help you. It becomes in a way of what I was explaining this to somebody. It's like you get, somebody hits you in your stomach while you're going down with it. They hit you in the face. That's how the boxers do. The tsunami.
That's how we're feeling in Dominica right now. We're feeling just like that.
Yeah. The tsunami in the west coast, I hope will not happen first. If the intercontinental movement happens on the land first, will take the pressure off the tsunami earthquake condition. It will be softer. But I put it this way, it's so imminent that I don't want to put my name into it because it's horrendous. As I said, 10 to 20 million death is instantaneous. It's absolute instantaneous. Because you don't get a chance to move, because it'll come like a snapping woods, one after another. It'll be multiple earthquakes. It's not a single earthquake, and they all happen within, by the time you come to recover, the next one, and the next one, and the next one. Don't forget, a lot of, especially water, has been diverted from inland in US into the west coast to satisfy the thirst of the LA, or what you call California. All these water lines will be cut off. All the power supplies in this section will be cut off. It's automatic nature of setting it up. It's been set that way to protect. Most of the dams will be released. Most of the nuclear power stations on the west coast will leak. It's a multiple disaster. It will hit, it will come at us. We've seen it, let me explain. We've seen this with Fukushima. Earthquake created the cracking of the reactor, and the cracking of the reactor created all the mayhem with Fukushima. It's the same process.
And how long do you imagine it will take humanity to rebuild and restructure?
We will forget it. We will forget, mankind will forget it, because it's part of our process. We will forget it in a very short time. They will pay for it.
I don't understand.
You see what happened in...
I don't understand that. Can you explain that a little clearer?
You see, how many of us do we speak about what happened in New Orleans a few years ago? How many of us do you speak about what happened in Indonesia? 100,000 lost in one go. We talk as this is how man has managed to progress. Disasters after a while become part of the memory, something happened. But the people who live in the disaster areas who've been affected, it takes them years and years to recover. That's part of the structure. Mankind has been built that way. Otherwise, we'll be too much burdened with the pain. But this is this situation with California if we were there or not, if there were so many people there or not, would have happened. Unfortunately, it's too many people live in the same area. But don't forget, this has a direct effect on Mexico City. This move will devastate Mexico City. You're sitting on a slum. You build this city on a slum, on a rocking platform of loose sand. It's not just one. The people from Mexico City now understand their position. You build the city.
My wife is from.
As I said to somebody from Mexico, you build the city on rock and roll. So when the earthquake comes, you will rock and roll.
My wife is from Mexico, so my family are Mexican. And what's your advice?
It's the same. We can't run away from it. We have to wait and see. It's the decision. As I said, I listened to the decision made by the Iranian government regarding Tehran. What are we going to do with it? Nothing. We wait till it happens and then we move the capital. That's the direct policy of the government. We'll have infections, we have bodies around for a few months or a couple of years, and people just go back and start living because we have to live, they want to live. They build, we've seen what happened in Chinese earthquakes. Hundreds of thousands dies and people carry on. We don't hear the pain of people. But the only difference from now on will be the Keshe Foundation Development Technology is there to relieve those who want to or survive their condition. These voices units with the power unit, with the plasma water and the rest and the pain pads, will introduce a new technology in the coming weeks where conversion of the plasma to food, and will be part of the plasma technology delivery of the energy. The situations has just happened for us to be at this time. It's not that it was planned. We just happen to be when it's going to happen. We are witnesses to an accident, we have no say in it. The accident has been planned for 1,000 millions of years.
Is this part of the same cycle that maybe hit us 13,000 years ago and 26,000 years ago?
I don't know. I don't know. You're talking about what you call about the meteorites and the rest. This is a part of the natural cycle of the Earth. We cannot interfere with it. This is one of the, this is one disaster, but don't forget, the whole world is not United States. The whole world is not. What happened with the Chinese when they had that huge earthquake a few years ago? They cleaned up, they did whatever they could, and the government in the background working to remedy the situation long term. I don't understand. It's, for me, it's a huge problem sometimes. Why is a big disaster if it happens in US? It happened in what they call it, in Indonesia. It's happened in Japan. It's happened in China on a frequent basis. It's another move, but this move is a separation of continents. So it'll be a very huge one. It's amazingly huge. I put it 10 to 12 on the Richter scale, and then multiple of them. We are worried about 7 or 8. Don't know. Up to minutes, several minutes, because the two continents have to split. In points you will reach, if you go on the Richter scale, you go up to 20, and the point of the separation of continents.
So what I'm wondering is, where I'm sitting in the Caribbean right now, I'm wondering what's the effect of that going to be in the Caribbean. We're on the other side of things there, but what would the effect be in the Caribbean of something like that?
I don't know. It'll affect a lot of people. It'll affect in so many ways. We have to wait and see. This is unknown. We don't know. We never experience it. We never experience it again. This is what the geologists do not understand, never understood. The earthquake in the west coast of the United States is a separation of two continents. And these things is like, I explain it. You have a sack of rice of 50 kilo hanging from a rope. You cut the rope bit by bit. Nothing happens till you snap the last piece and you get the crash. This is the last string to be cut. You see it from the structure of the continent. I was wondering so many times why people don't see this. It's a total separation of two continents. We have no say in it. This happens, it's been organized and done by the field forces within the planet. If you put the total loss on the southern part of the, what I call South American continent, you look in the region of 50 to 100 million losses. It's imminent. It's absolutely imminent. Because people will talk about helping California, but will not talk about how to help Mexico. They'll be too busy looking after people. And I told you, one of the things which I see will help the world peace is how rapidly we come together to establish a lot of forces for these situations, because 20 million deaths in the West Coast will release about 100 to 200 million people in pain and suffering across the United States. We've seen what happened. People moved south, people moved east, people moved towards where they can get shelter, and people have to accommodate people. It's not that it's just there, it happens and goes. Unless they put the zone and say, okay, whoever stays alive in this zone stays alive, because most of these parts will become unlivable. Chernobyl will be a child's play in the place of American nuclear power stations.
So it's the after effects that are going to be horrendous as well.
What happened in Japan with tsunami, with the Fukushima? It was a working reactor that had no problem. It's earthquake which triggered it. But this is inevitable. We just waiting to see how it comes, but the rocking and rolling and the movement of the planet and the fields within the structure planet is making it inevitable. It could happen tonight, it could happen next month, it could happen June of next year. I have a very good idea of a date. I have analyzed it, and I have a very good idea of date. If I tell you, you all run. But I have to keep silent. I can write it in writing, and when I write it's done, you will see.
Is there any validity to the September hype that everybody has, that something's happening in September? Is that valid, or is that part of it? Or?
I don't comment. I don't make no comment. But okay, to my calculation, to my understanding, I wasn't far out with the date with Japan, and I won't be far out with this. But if you live in that area, move today. Don't wait for tomorrow.
Okay, thank you. I think you've shared information
no,
with
us. It's just that we have. No, we don't know. We don't know. It depends on a lot of millions of tons and tons of material how they move. But the continents are pushing. You have to understand. You have to understand. We are entering the autumn season in the northern continent. The heat pressure changes in the continent by change of season. This creates expansion, contraction, and a field release from the plasmatic direction center of the planet. You don't study the earthquake, you study the peak of the earthquakes by the season. When the contraction and expansion of the top surface through the heating is gained, plus what comes out. It's not the heating, it's how much field is allowed to be released from inner part to the other part. In the summertime, you have gravitational magnetic field of the sun pressurizing the field down. In the winter down, it's taken away because of the positioning. And now the planet expands. Cha-ching.
Does this have anything to do with Mother Earth talking to the humans on the planet? Or
no, this is a natural
purely,
process. A natural process. It's purely a natural process. The autumn season always creates horrendous conditions because of the field forces of the sun retracts slightly further. So the gravitational field of the earth inertia from inside pushes up further. and it just creates the clock. Summertime is different. Wintertime is different. Summertime pushes it down. It's been pushed in because of the field forces of the sun. And now, as we're going in the autumn season, it's released. And when it's released, it's like, you know, you have a balloon in your hand. You can press the balloon with your finger inside. Yeah? And when you let it go, boom, it goes up with much stronger field force. And that's what's going to happen. This click this time, we can roughly say when it's going to be. It's very, very, it's a natural process. That's how this planet overclicked. But now it's a separation of the content the way I see it. And it's going to be huge when you go the last piece of the rope you got to cut. And we're on the last piece of the rope. You look at the structure of the connection between Northern and South America. Let's see where California sits. It's time to cut the rope, or what they call it, between the two partners. You're going to get hit in the Gulf of Mexico, and you're going to get hit in the west coast of America because it goes diagonally. It will push the continent of Australia to a different direction, that if the planet stays theoretically in it, it will link up with Southern America in the coming time. It has a very strange effect. It pushes the African continent up, and it will push the Australian continent back into South America as one piece in millions of years. It's inevitable. It's absolutely inevitable. And the autumn time is usually time of the clock. If we miss it this year, next year clock time comes.